going to do today. And you can see here that it's the secrets to optimizing measures, reporting, and analytics, and creating a clean line of sight. And the reason that we have this session here today, currently I'm down in Orlando, Florida. I reside in Denver, Colorado. We're down here at the MAXIMO World Conference. There's about 1,200 people here from around the world. I think there's 12 countries represented, 1,200 people, a mix of folks from IT side, CEO, C-level organization, the system, data in, no information out. So what we're going to try to do is figure out how to create a clean line of sight in that process. Okay, so here's the agenda today. We're going to look at understanding the hierarchy of reporting, because obviously everything is based off of how everything relates to each other. You'll find in this presentation that everybody is measuring everything, and not just everything that you're aware of. There are so many other side and supplementary ancillary reports that are going on outside of the organization, visibility, things like extra spreadsheets that are going on in Excel, things that you're tracking over here, you're putting in tables over there. And right now there seems to be a lot of disconnection going on. How to create cross-functional role-based reporting system. So quite frankly, there's a lot of different functions in the organization all interested in the same type of information. So what are we reporting on that they're going through the same painstaking effort to try to pull that same information? More importantly, how do you then take all that complexity and put it into role-based reporting? So if I'm a maintenance planner, as an example, what in the world do I need to see on a routine basis? Not only just to daily, perform my duties, which is very important, but in addition, what am I doing and using to improve my process, not just to get through the day? That's really important. The purpose of reporting and measures is to obviously help us do our job, but it should be providing guidance and some direction at which to improve or move our organization. So then the third one is one of my favorites, is how to create visualizations from the framework that you've put together. There's a lot of ways to depict data. There's one of the big topics here at this conference is this term floating around called dark data. Dark data. And dark data they're referring to as all the invisible ones and zeros that all of your systems are collecting on sometimes milliseconds, sometimes quarterly, weekly, daily batches or downloads. But all of this information is hiding in the data sphere. And our job is to figure out, in that giant complexity of information, or actually it's not even information, it's a bunch of data points. How do I go out there, grab what I need and turn it into a storyline through the lens at which the people who need it can see it? And then of course, as part of that, organizing measures, relationships, and adding processes and behaviors. I think probably that bullet point right there, adding processes and behaviors around your metrics, creates a causal map. So if you've identified all your KPIs and your performance indicators, and then you put all your behaviors linked to those, when they go out of whack, or they are heading in a direction or trending into a pattern that you're not happy with, instead of just saying, hey, the report says, I'm messed up, you don't need a report to know that. You can feel it, but the report validates it. More importantly, if you don't know what levers to pull as a result, you're going to have a major issue on trying to emotionally direct your people. And as a result, creating a clean line of sight through organizational objectives. Okay, so start out with a quick slide here. The word is called Kaizen. Kaizen is commonly found in the lean community, in the lean implementation, Lean Six Sigma. And that word is all around the improvement of a process. And a lot of people focus that word around more of where the product or services are being deployed. High visibility shop floor stuff. I'm making widgets and there seems to be a bottleneck, or there's a problem in extra material movement, or a quality defect issue that I have repeatedly. I will assemble a cross-functional team and implement a Kaizen methodology or approach from everybody who has a vested interest in that problem, and work on solving that problem in a rapid but steady improvement. Very few people are applying this principle, or lean principles for that matter, into the data management side of our business. Think about that. If you look in the data sphere, how much clutter is out there? when I look at the amount of processing time, the number of steps that it takes for me to convert background information into some report, it is absolutely astounding. Not only as a practitioner in this space for over 25 to 30 years, this is a nice picture of me, they cleaned me up. And one of the things that I was going to share with you here is I also had the opportunity to be a practitioner as well as a trainer and facilitator. And we had in our organization, we had a full-time person. We were running SAP at the time, and that seems to be a little less flexible with getting information than other systems, but you could get it. And as a matter of fact, in order to get it, I had a full-time person out there, and his job was to pull data from all of these disconnected systems. And then he would put them into about 6 or 7 pivot tables routinely. And he would run those pivot tables, convert them into Microsoft Excel, and turn them into a bar chart, where we then cut and pasted that bar chart and slapped it into a Microsoft PowerPoint slide. And then we presented it at our weekly meetings. Wow. The amount of effort and energy that went into telling a story that was frozen in time last week was really incredible. So boy, I wish I had the things that I'm about to share with you here in my previous world. So there's a funny little slide here, and it says that theory is when you know everything but nothing works. Practice is when everything works but nobody knows why. And then this sign was hanging in one of our customers' labs, and it said theory and practices are combined here. Nothing works and nobody knows why. And I think what we're going to try to do is to figure out how to get things to work, and more importantly, have a direct correlation and understand exactly why things are happening. And one of the ways we're going to get to that is to understand that there's a balance here. The green side is the solutions. These two things have to work together, by the way. I find, this is my own opinion, by the way, and all I've got to share with you is my experience in a half an hour. But my experience has shown that there's a tremendous amount of effort going on to the solution side of the business. A lot of work is done on the shop floor. I want to clean up my storeroom. I want to organize my bill of materials. I want to fix my preventive maintenance program. I want to teach operators. I want to perform root cause analysis. This is all on the green side of the equation. Traditionally, there hasn't been a balance of the blue side of the equation to drive those behaviors. Instead, a lot of these behaviors are being driven by emotional reaction to some unpleasantry in their experience or somebody else's pain point. You know, I remember specifically, I was working in a process, and our senior leadership said, "Man, we had a problem over here. You should go add more PMs to that machine." And we said, "Hey, wait a minute. That feels good, but is it really the solution to solve that problem? We have no data behind that decision. It seems to be an emotional response to that problem." So what I want to talk to you about is how to build this blue side to support and drive the green side. And as I just mentioned to you, everybody's focusing primarily on the green. That's where you get your funding, by the way, for the most part. And there's a big push for IIoT or IoT, depending on which acronym you're using. Wow, what a big topic that is at this conference down here. Tons of speakers talking about all of these different ways to collect more data. So imagine all of those systems now throwing more into the data lake or the information system, and more data. They're filling up the bucket, and it creates a very, very heavy, low, slow adjusting, non-agile system. So the excitement around all this technology is what we could do. So we start putting all this stuff in place and we create more data, puts an increased pressure on the IT group to support the users of the process, and it's not very flexible. We did a presentation yesterday with a group of folks, and they said, what in the world do you guys do? And we said, hey, our job is to create the analytics full experience of analytics. And they said, well, what in the world is that? And as we started to tell them, they said, hey, we can do most of that. We said, absolutely you can. But the problem is, why are you where you are today? And it's not necessarily sometimes the lack of talent, although sometimes that is an issue. More importantly, the biggest obstacle is bandwidth. It's purely bandwidth. It's how do I respond and work these processes to help support the teams. So one of the problems with creating the bandwidth is that there's a lot of systems out there creating data, as I just mentioned to you. So all of these disparate systems that are out there, they're creating all this data that's coming into place, and we're trying to create reports that are linked directly to these sources. There's another way where all those sources can provide data into a pool, and then ultimately On the bottom are all the systems that will extract and communicate that data out to an end user. So depending on what your company has and what format, doesn't really matter. And by the way, none of this matters. In an analytics world, if done correctly, the process is agnostic to the software's feeding it and to the authoring tool or technology that's interpreting it or building out the reports. So if you're doing Power BI or BERT reporting or Cognos or Tableau, doesn't matter, all of this stuff stands true. How do you take all of this information and communicate it into some clarity, point of clarification? So if you look at this, on the left is all the systems that are out there generating data, and in the middle is sort of the configuration and the engine at which I convert that data into information, and on the right are dashboards that people see, interact with. I can tell you one thing, there is no shortage of reports and dashboards. The question is, are they the right ones? That's really important. If the reports and dashboards are built from the perspective on the left-hand side of the graph, they're not using the what we call voice of the customer, of the people who are going to use that data. And there seems to be good stuff presented in a very sleek and crisp fashion, but in the other hand, is it exactly what I need, where I need to see it? So one of the things we're going to start looking at here is a way to maybe apply some lean principles to this complex, messy process. And there's a process called 5S, and I'm not sure if everybody knows 5S, but 5S is sort, straighten, shine, standardize, sustain. It's from the lean methodology, and it's one of the tools where you remove all the clutter, you put everything where it needs to be, you shine it up and clean it, and while you clean it, you find defects in it, and then you sustain and standardize that. So let me give you a quick example of a few of these things. Defining what specific data and sources are required is part of sorting. Take all the reports that you have currently, put them off to the side, don't even look at them. Ask your users, what is your process and how do I know that that's working? And how can you tell me that that's working? What decisions do you make in order to make that process work? You build out those requirements from the perspective, and then you can bump them against all the legacy and existing data that you have. You're going to find out two things. One, you don't have all the right reports that you need. Secondly, of the reports that you need, some of the information is questionable. You know, data validity, data maturity, data integrity. I've got some customers that can tell you, as an example, I can give you craft utilization, the time of all the hours that I spend captured on work orders. But one of my managers told my guys on the floor, hey, I need you to record all your time on work orders, and magically I get 6.5 worth of work hours recorded on work orders every single day. That tells me nothing. So yeah, I can get you that information, but there's no degree of confidence in it. The second is aligning, once I sort it out, aligning those to the role-based pathways that I need. And as I do that, I can find all of these discrepancies and broken elements inside of the report. So I clean them up. And then standardizing. This probably, to me, is one of the most important things outside of everything else, because the discrepancies of how people even describe the same performance indicator is incredible. I'm working with a company that only has 4 sites. You think that this would be really easy. You can't get a definition of downtime between 4 sites and they all do the same thing. So standardizing definitions, process logic, and the recipes and formulation for your reports, simply done once, but that serves a huge, huge benefit down the line. And of course, sustainment. How do I keep using the reports? Recent study we did, over 75% of the reports that are generated on a routine basis are not used by the people who need to see the data. So there's really we're not using the reports to drive decisions or to navigate our meeting agendas in those. This is a very verbose slide, but it's to make a point, not to teach you a lot of things. But the point is that there are 7 wastes in every process. Doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're making components, if you're serving lunch, if you have to take a trip someplace, all of these 7 wastes are part of the experience that eats up value added time and resources. And it applies to the analytics world too. So let me just run through the 7 wastes for you real quick. Again, a copy of these slides are available if you're interested in them, but overproduction is producing more than what people need right now. And if you think about that, database configuration, sample refresh rates, the frequency at which we're generating all this information is a form of overproduction. Transportation is the movement of product or data that doesn't add any value. So people touching the same reports, manually transmitting through emails, reports. Why can't I just go click a pathway over here? My 15-year-old son gets aggravated when something takes 3 minutes to download. 10 years ago, I would have been, I'd have been celebrating and excited about that. But the tolerance for movement of stuff and inefficiency is really getting low. Motion is the movement of people. Doesn't mean to be I have to get up out of my seat, although it can. But it's also the motion of me physically running all of these tables, going to different applications, copying data, sending it out to various shareholders. Waiting, that's the one we were just talking about, not having what you need and some form of waiting, including waiting for reports to be created. So how many reports are sitting in the IT queue? Processing, frequent conflict, effort that adds no value, inventory, and defects. By the way, the transportation is one of the most significant waste, because in the form of transportation, the highest probability that all of these other things are going to happen. So it's really important to create a streamlined approach to that. What we look at here is a framework of performance measures. It starts at the very top, works our way to the bottom, or invertedly, it works at the bottom and builds up towards the site objectives. That one is less found than the one from top-down mandate. But if at the very top of the organization, I've got leadership, management, practitioners, and then you can also see that there are also layers of different departments that are in my group, and they all have functional areas. So there's a lot of opportunity for confusion in this model, but this is really what's going on out there. And if you take a look at, just for instance, work planning, work management, there's a whole bunch of measurements that all have some form of a relationship on these tiers. And if you bump up this list against a gap analysis, you can see out of these measures, which ones I do measure, could measure, don't measure. On the right-hand column is the degree of confidence in the ones. The could means that I have the data, I have the capability, I don't have the report, I don't have the vehicle at which to communicate it. But I do have all the stuff I need. Whether or not it's good stuff remains to be seen. So you can run a gap on your current as is to be model for what you're measuring based off of this framework. And then the other part is you can do a gap analysis on the degree of confidence. If you have a yellow or red in that right category, those are actionable items. Somebody doesn't trust that number, either we continue with the behavior that's causing that problem or we change our process. Here, really quick, is a hierarchy and a framework looking at different areas of focus from the top of management, stakeholders, goals and objectives, decisions and planning and strategy, and then down to execution, and they rest on these pillars of information. This is just a sample, and what I'm showing you, by the way, is the result of a 2-week exercise and evaluation in analytics, measures, and reporting that we do for our clientele. And you can see here asset management, life cycle engineering, operations, etc. And the whole idea is to mitigate risk and to provide people what they need when they need it. All right, when you grab a role and you're going to look at maintenance planners as an example, you can find out all the reports based on that gap analysis of what do they have today, what's working, what's not, what's missing from their queue. And now you have a strategic plan to provide those individuals what they need specifically. And ultimately, there's a report based on role of the bill of health as to the exact strategy and condition of my current reports and the top indicators that they need and where are we operating. So that's really cool. I want to take you outside of this for a quick second. I want to show you something really cool. I get excited about this because it's visualization is half the battle of communication. And what I'm showing you here, this is an example of improvements, continuous improvement of the DMAIC model, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Layered over the top of, this is uptime elements. One of the sponsors and organizers of the conference down here is the Uptime Elements program, which is a framework to organize all of these different things in enterprise asset management. And what we've done here is I've taken, and I'm just going to show you a few things. These are, and I'm just going to click on this. These here are the site measurements, and I'm going to filter this. Let me just show you something real quick. And I'm going to show you that these are what the site at the very highest level are interested in, right? These are all nice measurements that are going on at that level. Over here, these are functional measurements. And you can see we're starting to build down the pyramid, but they all touch each other, and some things touch multiple things. So now I have a measurements relationship that I'm starting to build. And maybe I want to get down into department level. And you can start seeing that at a department level, these are starting to feed up and roll up into other things that people care about. And for the first time, by the way, I'm going to turn on tactical. So now you can see this is boots on the ground stuff that's going on. And if I were to take, as an example, productivity or wrench time of my staff, I can create a clean line of sight from that. And I can find a cause and effect of what's going on from a measures perspective. But that's only half the story. What I really like about this is, what if I were able, as you can see here, these are the things that my organization is interested in based on the level of the organization. But what about the behaviors that are touching this? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to turn off a filter that I have, and I'm going to add, you're going to see a layer build upon this. Watch the dots in the center. And now you see a whole big thing develop. What we just done is we released all of the behaviors and processes that have a direct relationship to these particular performance indicators. And as an example, if you look here at productivity or wrench time, well, let's take mean time to repair. Mean time to repair, the total cycle time of a job. And I'm going to collapse this for a moment. And I'm going to look over here. That has an ID number in the SMRP's body of knowledge. That measurement has been determined, it's been standardized, the community, the industry recognizes that this is the formula for it. It is what it is. And that formula right there is going to be impacted by a series of things that I can come in here, and when that starts to go out of whack, I can figure out what's causing that problem at what level in my organization. So that's pretty cool. The other part of it is I can even trace down. By the way, this is a layer that we put in over the top of all of the dashboards. And these things start blinking red or change in size and dimension as things go out of whack. But more importantly, you can't build it if you don't have the framework. So the mean time to repair, one of the things lots of things affect mean time to repair, including how productive my team are. So one of the things my team could be, hey, maybe they're looking for parts, and that causes the productivity to go down, which has an effect on the cycle time of my job. And people are saying, why is things taking so long? And when you start coming back in here into root cause, we could start tracing down into this particular problem and saying, why are they looking for parts? Maybe there's no bill of materials. Maybe these are all behavioral things. These are things affecting these KPIs. What if I were able to come in here, and I'm going to color this by responsibility. What if I were able to come in here and say, who's involved with this problem? So as an example, let me just color it by responsibility. And you're going to see in here that that problem isn't owned by a maintenance guy. It's owned by a lot of people. There's a lot of folks touching that thing or have an effect upon that thing. I've got storeroom, obviously, the engineer, reliability engineer, planner, maintenance supervisor. All of these individuals have some form or fashion or vested interest in this particular relationship of this problem. The reason that we're showing you this is that for the first time on one of our teams, the CFO sits on the reliability steering team for asset management. I very rarely see that kind of C-level participation. I said, what in the world are you doing here? And she said, for the first time, you've drawn a clean line of sight from what we do every day to the things that I'm measuring and being measured upon quarterly, semi-annually, annually. If we don't fix that stuff, my indicators go out of whack, and by the time it hits me, it's too late. So what we want to be able to do is figure out who's involved, who cares about these particular problems, and then be able to show relationships of those things. So anyway, that's just one way to layer a visualization. I really like that because everybody's got pyramids and little Visio flow charts, but this is really dynamic. This is real-time stuff. And if you're able to move this around, build out why is labor not available, then we can start looking at different things, and you'll find cross relationships in here and triangulation, which means if I can break that pattern, I'm going to have a profound impact on a number of things, not just the problem at hand. So I'm going to hop you back out of here. By the way, if you want a demo on this, this is an hour in and of itself, right? This is really good stuff. At least I'm excited about it. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you in this process is what is the total analytics experience. I've talked to you a little bit about the measures and reporting architecture. And by the way, this is often overlooked. We spend a lot of time around this blue number 1 down here. The data management and infrastructure is where we normally start. The IT group focuses on data warehouse. How am I going to extract backup information, downloads, and dump it into either the data lake or the data warehouse? But I haven't done this first step yet to figure out how to configure all that data and point it into the roles that are going to look at it. We just showed you as a planner what I'm interested in, right? And then more importantly, because of that, that visualization, I can run through simulation analytics. Maybe my productivity right now is 30%. By the way, industry average, 25%. That's amazing, by the way. That's only the value added time inside the work order, by the way, not the time on work orders. I'm working at a customer right now, 48% of his time or their time is captured on work. And of the 48%, only 25% of that time is value added. The rest is looking for parts, trying to find people, traveling, getting ladders, permits, all of that stuff. And they have a full planning function. So you'd say, well, I've checked off the box. I've got planners and schedulers. The question is it effective? What can I do to improve that process? I don't know if I don't have the right measurements in place. And then what do I do once the measurement or the scale tells me I'm overweight? By the way, this is the scale. This is the fitness program on the right. And the combination of these elements, this is the expertise that you need in order to really deliver this circle. By the way, if you got all these elements, you don't need us. There's a lot of things in place that you're currently doing. Maybe it's working out great, fantastic. Maybe all this webinar is doing is confirming what you already believe in. Or maybe there's something new you're learning in this thing. So one of the things I'd like to share with you is a quick overview of this middle part, because without this, you can't do what you're supposed to be doing. All right, so if I were able to take a quick look at this information, I think one of the biggest things in this center isn't necessarily the skill sets that are required to deliver it. There should be an invisible layer around this whole thing called bandwidth. Bandwidth. I just don't have the time, the energy to deliver all of these things. I've got the know-how, I just don't have the time to find time. And I think ultimately at the end of this day, you're going to say, you know what, we can do it. We just need some help doing it. Or, you know what, some different groups are helping us with different elements. How do I tie them all together? All right. So lastly, this is sort of the result of the end of the webinar. What is the outcome of this? It's called right first time. Again, another lean principle. And lean principle says right first time if you do everything the correct way. I want the right data to make the right interpretation so that I can make the right business decisions that are in line with my right strategy, which are pointing my people in the right direction. By the way, nobody in this room or on this virtual room is looking for more things to do, which means I got to be pretty precise on what I ask my team to participate in. I need the right solution and I need the right execution. And at the end of this information, this really is an important outcome for the session. So this is 30 minutes of me talking at you. Again, if you wish to have a request of some of the materials, we'd be more than happy to send them. Just put it in the chat box and I'd be more than happy to fulfill that request.